All right. So we are live. Welcome to the Mic Check Podcast, our first live stream. We're going to give some folks time to show up and see what's good. And then we're going to go from there.
Yeah, first
Um,
of many. Thank everybody for coming in. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate all the love and support from everybody that's going to be joining us today.
for sure.
Um, we definitely appreciate all of the love and all of the support that we're going to be getting, not only now but in the future. So join
For
us,
sure.
man. Join us.
Definitely. So we're going to
I'm
give
gonna
some
send a
people a
quick.
chance to,
Go
yeah,
ahead
go
and
ahead and
send
tweet
a
that
quick
out.
tweet out. Yeah, I'm gonna tweet that we go ahead and go live now, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we can just chill. We're going to take our time with it. Um,
A lot of topics to talk about today. A lot of great stuff.
for
I think
sure.
honestly, this is the most exciting show I think that we're gonna have so far of all the shows that we've done.
No
Not
doubt.
just because it's live, but just because of the wide variety of topics and all of this stuff is like in the last 3 days. It's kind of crazy that like literally like all of this stuff is stuff that's happened really, really recently. It's not stuff that a lot of people have gotten a chance to talk about yet. So it'll be good.
Yeah, and you really, when you think about it, like normally when we have big sports topics in general, just as sports fans, a lot of times everything is kind of spread out. You have one major thing, and then everything else is just passing news, 15 minutes of fame news. If you think about some of the major sports stories, like let's think about like Tiger Woods, right? When his news came out, there literally was really nothing else going on.
Mm-hmm.
And just not to bring up something bad about somebody, but when you think about just major impactful news that crosses over into other areas besides sports, that's one of those things. So it's kind of like, wow, this is a really busy time to close out the year. So we're not lacking on topics, that's for damn sure.
No,
But
not at all.
in the meantime, so I don't know if you got a chance. This isn't one of our regular topics, but I figured we could spend a few minutes talking about this for now, give a few people a chance to show up, and then maybe in about 5 minutes we'll get into what we truly have on the
Have
agenda for
planned,
today.
yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
but I reposted a link to, it's a channel that goes by Chicken Talk.
Mm.
Um, and they actually had Tank Davis on for a, I can't say an interview because it was just people asking questions in a
Mm-hmm.
space.
Q&A session, basically.
Yeah, it's a Q
Mm.
and A. So um Tank was on there. He spoke really candidly about a lot of stuff. I mean, his personality got to show through. So it's kind of like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm definitely interested in seeing more stuff like that. As I understand it, Lefty actually had Deontay Wilder on there a while back. So that just gives me the idea that in this space that we're in, there's opportunity to actually connect with these athletes and talk
Mm.
to them on a more personal level, some unprecedented access. So I kind of want to get you to just give me your opinion of that and what you think about like just the access that we're given as athletes these as journalists these days.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty side to, technology, to social media, to all of the innovation that's happened, right? Is that we have ways to connect with athletes, with people that we used to not be able to touch or used to not be able to have that kind of access to
Mhm.
when they allow it and when it's, when it's allowed or when it's, kind of a forum is created for it. So I think it's really cool. I think ultimately, though, the trade-off is that now these athletes, as well as the people that are covering these athletes, are under a higher microscope because
Mhm.
everybody's trying to get a piece, right? If you can do, a 30-minute convo with this YouTuber or this content creator, you know that there's 12, 20, 30, 40 more people asking for that same kind of access. So
Mhm.
that puts a lot more demand on the athlete, but it also allows the athlete in a lot of cases, especially, and this goes back to something we talked about in our last episode, as far as notoriety and why there's a lot of lack of notoriety for a lot of boxers in general, but specifically American boxers now. Um, as long as they're able to join, right? As long as they're able to join in on that conversation on a regular basis, they
Mhm.
can create that buzz and they can create that hype around their names without having to really do a whole lot of work. You
Yeah.
used to have to do commercials, you used to have to do sponsorships, and all those things still make you money. But nowadays, if you just want to get a high profile, or you want people to know where your fight's at, or you want people to know when you're doing an appearance, all you got to do is tweet something. All you got to do is jump on somebody's live, jump on somebody's show, just like our own.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's like you're saying, not only is it something, it's more of a relaxed forum too, because sometimes when athletes get into formal interviews, they hide a piece of themselves. But when you could get an athlete to get into an actual conversation where you're talking and you're not giving the generic media questions, you're
Mm-hmm.
asking them things about, hey man, so I saw you and your kids were at this particular event. Is that something you're interested in? Is your kid interested in that? And you get to get a little, you pull the curtain back and you get a piece of what the athletes are really about. And I really just appreciate that type of access that we're being given as, I guess, more of a relaxed media. I mean, you're more professional media than me. Let's keep it clear. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? That's what
right.
you do. But on this particular platform, this is more casual media, the new media, if you will. And I think that it's really important that we're being able to touch athletes, and you're going to see more mainstream media start to relax the forum. I think one thing that really helped cross over the space was more athletes have created podcasts and vlogs and stuff like that, video podcasts. Um, so they're starting to get those guys comfortable. Like, hey, well, if I could talk to this former player, I could talk to just an everyday Joe that has a nice little podcast with a decent following, and I get to advertise whatever I'm doing, and I don't have to pay for that spot. That dude's gonna be happy to have me on his platform and bring my followers with him. So I'm gonna go ahead and entertain those requests, because what's funny is the way that the interview with Tank got set up. One particular person on Twitter that I also follow, he would just say different stuff, and Tank will respond or like it or retweet whatever, and then he was like, "Yo, just once you come on the talk show with us, won't you come on and talk with us?" And it just went from there. So just the way
Yeah.
that that access was created is just something that's unheard of. So I'm just happy to see that we're in that space.
Yeah.
Looks like a few people are showing up and
Yeah,
everything.
we did get a comment in.
Okay.
Noelle, that's my sister. She says, very true, fellas, when talking about the access and the unprecedented access that we have to not only athletes, but famous people. She said, this translated to other forms of coverage too. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have recently barred the press from early coverage of their new docuseries Netflix. That's not
Mm.
something that I knew, but my sister does cover a lot of movies and books and stuff like that. That's her passion side of things from her journalistic experience. So yeah, very true, Noel. We appreciate you joining. Thank you so much for the love. I appreciate you, love you, and that's very accurate. I think now that we've had a chance to kind of see, where new media and new media strategies have allowed access into, it allows us to have a lot more flexibility, but it also puts a lot more pressure on these famous people, on these athletes to always have up, their best foot forward, right? You used to think that athletes could do stuff back in the day and nobody would find out about it. Like it was huge taboo back in the 90s, right? When people found out that MJ used to go to Atlantic City when they would play the Knicks. He'd go
Right.
to Atlantic City overnight, gamble, and then play the game the next day. Now he did this in a playoff series, and it was actually a part of the documentary. Now that we're specifically talking about Netflix,
Right.
um, part of the documentary there was a big segment where he had a bad game after going to the casino,
Hmm.
and the Bulls went down 2-0 in the series, and it was a serious topic where, oh man, Michael, he's not
Yeah,
focused.
he's not
Michael's not.
focused.
Michael's got other things going on. He's, does he have a gambling addiction? Yada yada yada. So,
Right.
you know, that kind of stuff you can't get away with it now. The minute
Yeah.
that a LeBron or a KD steps outside of the Ritz Carlton in Manhattan, everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
So these athletes have to be a lot more careful. Excuse
Oh,
me, a lot more
absolutely.
careful with what they do, what they say, where they go, and who they hang around because of the unprecedented access that's being provided. Everybody's got a camera now, so
That's
everybody
big
can see.
facts. There's always a camera on. And what's funny is, I guess I'm just old school. Man, I get to doing stuff and having fun. And the last thing I'm thinking about is pulling my camera out and photographing it or filming it.
Right.
But then there's like other people in the group that the camera's out the entire time. Everything is
Mm,
a clip, everything is a boomerang.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it just tells you how things have evolved and things have changed. Like I'm used to having a phone in my pocket, but I'm still not used to using it as a tool that a lot of the people in media and just in general use their phones. So that's a really good point you're bringing up right there. These athletes are always under some type of microscope. Somebody could always just pull out a camera and just start telling the world exactly what you're doing at any given time. So it's even
Absolutely.
almost a little bit
Absolutely.
scary. So
Yeah. If anybody else, and I'll say this one thing before we get
yeah, go
started. If
ahead.
anybody has any questions or any comments or anything that they'd like to add to the conversation, please drop your comments in the comment box down below. We'll be reading some of these off as we get through the show today. We really appreciate the feedback.
For sure.
And then will obviously at some point we'll start having some guests join us for various reasons,
For
and
sure.
we'll definitely we'll get some guest ideas from some of these people that are giving us comments and feedback. So we really do appreciate it from those that are going to be doing it while we're on live, as well as those that are going to watch afterwards. For all my folks that are going to watch after this post online, please comment, subscribe, and like, and we will really try to get back to you as soon as we can.
For sure. We definitely want to integrate the viewer support and make this thing better, make this channel better day by day. So as you can see on the screen, I need to work on
Yeah.
my cover art. It says prime suspect, prime suspect. So we're going to talk about the recent move of head coach Coach Prime, aka Deion Sanders, moved from Jackson State University and HBCU onto an FBS school in Colorado University Buffaloes. So I've already pretty much kind of laid out my opinion on this in a previous video, but I did want you to get the opportunity to go first. And we're just going to kind of discuss some different talking points related to this particular move that he's made. So I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to you, bro, and just go ahead and cook on it and tell me what you think about the situation in general. Give me your first thoughts.
Yeah, my first thoughts honestly were that I kind of felt like obviously anytime that a black man specifically gets an opportunity that is not provided to all of us on a frequent level, right? It's a big deal, and it's good. It's great news. I think that there needs to be more representation of African American, not just men but women as well, in all of these major sports that we dominate. When you talk about women's basketball, you talk about men's basketball, you talk about football. All of these sports are sports that are predominantly played, at least at the highest Division I, as well as the professional levels, by a lot of African American athletes. So thus, I feel like the greatest representation of those athletes should also be in these head coaching positions, as well as in these GM positions, all the way up to you get to ownership, which is something that constantly needs to be improved. And I hope that it's something that, these major leagues can continue to try to work on, because there's definitely room for growth and improvement in that aspect. But, the first thing that kind of came to my mind when I thought about Deion leaving Jackson State was after I saw his kind of like, I wouldn't call it really a press conference, but I guess it was kind of like his announcement that he posted when he told the Jackson State players. And it kind of made me think, okay, what was his purpose for going to Jackson State? I had a small conversation with my dad about this a couple of days ago, and I kind of summed it up to him like this. I said, if his purpose was to help elevate HBCUs and prove that HBCUs should be seen as on the same footing with major Power 5 conferences, with major PWIs that compete, at the highest levels in Division I, or was his purpose to use this Jackson State opportunity to help some people out, help get some people's feet in the door, help bring some TV revenue and some eyes to HBCUs, but while simultaneously using it as a stepping stone? That's one of the things that I would ask him if I got to have a conversation with him, is to figure out which one of those was his biggest motivation. Was it, hey, I want to get into college football so that I can try to move forward with my coaching career and try to see if I can get to the highest of levels coaching college football? Or was it, my goal is to help bring HBCUs to the Power 5 level?
That's a good point that you're bringing up. What was the end game, or what was the next play, I guess you could say, because since he's still in the industry, since he's still moving forward, it's not at the end game stage yet. But what was the next play? What were you setting up a future move for others, or were you simply allowing yourself a springboard? I'm going to personally say that it was a couple of things. It wasn't just him setting up a move for himself. It was him setting up the move for others, because as I understand it, he's created opportunities for his assistant coaches to actually improve their standard of living by making more money as head coaches at the FBS level, as well as elevating people from his Jackson State staff to move up and do more as well. So what it looks like to me is that Coach Prime is in a position to help others, but he's going to also benefit from all the great work that he's doing. He says he was led there by God. And I believe, God said, hey, mission accomplished. You've opened the door for some people. Let's see what they can do with it from here. Let's take it to the next level.
Yeah. You know what? I honestly can appreciate that if that was what his goal was. But unfortunately, for me at least, I have to say that, in my opinion, my understanding of his purpose for going to this HBCU was specifically to help to raise these HBCUs' perception to get them to a Power Five level. Now, if that's not the case, then I'll stand corrected. But that was just my understanding of what his ultimate goal was not just to, win SWAC conference championships, which he did. It wasn't just to bring revenue to one of the lowest earning communities or states in the country, right, which he did. It wasn't just to allow his sons an opportunity to play college football at the Division I level, which he did, but it was to help raise the profile and the perception that HBCUs have always been lower than other Division I schools, right? I'll give you a perfect example. There's a Division I school not too far from Jackson State. It's actually here in Texas, UT Rio Grande Valley. They used to be called UT Pan America. They went to Division I about 6 years ago. I think it was about 6 years ago. I actually was still in college while they were transitioning. And that school is a Division I school that plays in a Division I conference. Now, it's a mid-major Division I school, right? But there are many of those. There's another one real close to my home, UT Arlington, right? UT Arlington regularly gets wins, at least in college basketball. Now, definitely probably not in college football, but regularly gets wins against high-profile major Division I teams. And they play those teams on a regular basis. So whenever you see UTA men's basketball on your schedule, you already know that it's probably not going to just be an easy win like you may have against some other lower tier Division I schools. My unfortunate feeling is that leaving kind of cosigns the idea that HBCUs are not the same or not on the same level or won't be on the same level as some of these major PWIs and some of these Power Five conferences. Because in my opinion, it just came down to the one word that he used in that video that I saw. And I don't know if you saw it. It was the one where he talked about when he spoke to his team about his decision to leave. Yeah, and he said, you either get terminated or you get elevated.
Right.
And I want everybody to think about that just for a second. Elevated. To elevate over something means to rise above, to be above, or to grow and be better than something that you used to be or be somewhere that you used to be at.
Right.
And essentially what he's saying is that going to Colorado is better than being at Jackson State when that's the verbiage that you use. And I just find that problematic because my thought was Jackson State was getting all this press and Jackson State was getting this push. And he even said it at the early part of this season. He said, we're not at the level as a team to where we can compete with Ole Miss and Alabama, but we'll get there. He said that. That's on camera. So in my mind, I'm thinking your goal is to get this program to a point where they can compete. Maybe not win national titles, but they can be on the same field with Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, all the major schools in that conference. And when you leave and say, well, I'm just elevating, unfortunately, it makes it sound like you're going to somewhere that you think is better than where you were. That's
so poor choice of words, sure. But I will push back on when I think of him looking at it as a point of elevation. What I think happened is he started off with very grand expectations and maybe even overthought his reach.
That's him.
And in
that's
terms,
just him anywhere he goes. But he's always won a million miles down the road. Exactly.
Yeah, but he's always won. So he came in with the mindset of, I could do this. I could fix this. And I mean, by all accounts, he actually did. The only thing he didn't do was get them to the FBS level. Now, that being said, being realistic, he understands that we're not at the point of being able to, if we put Alabama on the schedule for a home and away or whatever you want to call it, we're losing by 60. Let's just be honest. They're going to go 5 deep. We're going to go maybe 2 deep. And that's the reason that he's able to dominate at the FCS level versus being able to take that to the next level. So I think that the statement of elevation is true in the fact that if you had to just do X's and O's, and football is more of a demonstration of the talent gap than, say, basketball. Basketball, it's a little bit easier, and this isn't taking anything away from the skill set and the elite athletes that play basketball, but it's a little bit easier to find
It's
you a
a
good
numbers
starting
game.
5 or 6. Yeah, a good
It's a
5 or
numbers
6
game.
that can run it up for you and go toe to toe with the best. Whereas football, you need to go like 3 deep at certain positions to compete with the
30
most
players at
elite
least
teams.
on the same level.
Yeah,
30 players at
exactly.
least.
Exactly. A significant portion of your roster. So I think that after he got there and he realized that it was a much more massive undertaking than he initially thought, he started to see those offers and went, hey, I like what I'm doing here, and I've set somebody up for success because I've got money coming in. I've got better facilities, so now you can recruit. You've already done well in attendance. I did share that Jackson State averaged about 33,000 in attendance on a regular to home games before his arrival. They've elevated that number to about 42 or 43. So he's increased by about 10,000 in attendance. His time there has seen 30 million in revenue coming to the city. So he's really helping. He helped in that way. So I think that moving on to something that's going to be a little bit better for his coaching career, because let's think of it from this angle. If Dion had come in and he went, if I'm not mistaken, he's gone 6-20. I mean, he's gone 27-6 over his time, or something to that effect with the Celebration Bowl. What if it were reversed? What if he had been a losing coach? They would have wasted no time kicking his butt out of town.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
in my opinion, he beat him to the punch and was like, hey, I got to get out of here while the getting is good, and strike while the iron is hot, and go take advantage of these other opportunities that lie before me, such as making more money, because he made 1.2 million over 4 years
Over
there,
4 years, yeah. So that's
whereas
nothing.
he's gonna make 5.5 million his first year and get a $200,000 raise each year as long as
Yeah.
he's there. And then either he can pay to get out of the contract, or they'll have to buy him out if he's fired, if he's not successful. But I just heard the transfer portal has like a ridiculous number of kids looking to come his way.
Yeah.
So I feel like Colorado's going to be a top 25 school this coming fall next year, and they'll probably be in the top 10 a year after that, with the way he's bringing his own luggage, and then he's going to recruit some luggage from other people. I saw like 3 Alabama dudes already tweeting like, "Coach, you got room for me in the portal?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it looks like some good things are happening.
Here's the thing, and I'll say this last
Okay.
thing, and then we'll move on. I can understand the growth of an individual and wanting to do better and wanting to be in a better position and wanting to make more money. I'm never, ever, ever going to tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do for their own family, for their own career, for their own financial gain, because it doesn't matter how much money Dion made as a player. If he still wants to make money and he has a way to make money, that's within his prerogative, and that's his full, complete right to do so. So I don't want anybody that's listening to this to think that I'm against him because he decided to go somewhere where he was going to make more money, or he decided to go to a conference where he would have better recruiting or better facilities, which I think is an excellent point made by Miss Sheila, my mother. Thank you, Mom. Appreciate you watching.
Absolutely.
But my thing was just, think about it on the other side. Travis Hunter, right? #1 recruit, could have went anywhere in the country, right? He decided last year, you know what? I'm going to commit to this HBCU thing because of Coach Prime, because Dion helped me see the vision that he had moving forward, which was, we need to get the best players to come to our schools. And when we can get them to come to our schools, we're going to have the ability and the option to then compete with these schools that we said that we couldn't compete with before. But unfortunately for now, it looks like because Prime is leaving, Travis Hunter's probably going to leave too. Dion already said that he's bringing his son with him, which that goes into a whole nother thing, and we'll talk about that at a whole nother thing, because that was the press conference he had once he got to Colorado after he got to talk to the press, and then he got to talk to the players that were at Colorado, right?
Right.
That sends the wrong message as well to me personally. So it's a difficult situation, because all of that press and all that media and all that push in the narrative, in the goals, in the realistic opportunities that Jackson State now has, right? It's possible when you have the right coach and you have the right fit. But when you leave that void, while you are well within your right to do so, what does Jackson State go back to being? Their quarterback's leaving. Their head coach that does all the great recruiting and got 5-star recruits is leaving. The number one recruit in all of college football this past year, he's probably going to leave. Don't know if he's announced that or not. Don't know if he said he's not. So if he says he's not leaving, kudos to him, because that's shocking to me. Yeah. But there's a domino effect. And it just would have been really nice to see Deion do an Eddie Robinson, personally, for me. That would have been really nice. To see him stay long-term at Jackson State and turn them into an NFL factory where every year they're getting 1 or 2, 3 guys to come out of that program that leads them to become professionals, to eventually maybe get to the FBS level where they're possibly playing some of these schools, maybe not Big 12 or maybe not even SEC. But if they were able to get to a Sun Belt, or if they were able to get to a Southwest Conference, they were able to get to that level, that mid-major level, I think it would have been really awesome to see. It's not going to happen more than likely now until there's another guy who has the vision that Deion has. But it's a difficult spot because I think Jackson State is going to take a big hit, and I don't think that they're going to be able to be back on that same level. The interesting part that I will let people know, that's my last point I'll say before we move on. ESPN, we're watching. ESPN Plus, we're watching. Because you guys decided to do all this extra coverage and to give the platform to these HBCUs. And a lot of that had to do with Deion, and we appreciate Deion for doing that. But we're watching to see what you're going to do now.
Right.
Are you going to strip all that TV time away and give it back to something else? Are you going to strip it? Because I wonder, and I didn't get to read an article about it, but I wonder what these HBCU TV contracts look like if they were year to year or if they were a 3 or a 4-year deal. But when that deal is up, that got struck before this past football season started, it'll be real interesting to see if they stay as committed as they say they wanted to be now that Deion's left the SWAC conference.
So in regards to that, it is a 10-year deal, fortunately, and Byron Allen has something to do with that too. So the good news is they're secured to get some TV time. Now, if there's some precursors to keeping that time, like you have to have a certain amount of attendance at your games or something like that, I'm sure that the networks have some type of out because they understood that Deion was a temporary fixture. But we do have some NFL level coaches, former NFL players, former Hall of Famers that are injecting themselves into HBCUs. So we might see some good stuff happen on that particular front. You know what I mean? And let's go ahead and read this comment here. I'm glad you highlighted that one.
Yeah.
From Mrs. Lilley. Thank you for joining us. Elevation could mean more money, more TV exposure, more student enrollment, better facilities, larger attendance. And I think it's all of the above.
All of those happened.
They got more money.
I can agree with that. All of that
more
happened.
TV, more enrollment is up like crazy for HBCUs. The facilities by themselves, he got that up the first year. And then they did increase attendance at their school. And Ricky Smiley shared this on it was kind of a rant that he did on his social media. And he talked about, he's an Alabama State alumni. And he was talking about the attendance and that they were starting to sell out because people were getting hyped about getting ready for Deion and his team to come there and play. So it's some really good things going on there. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic. And Kyrie Irving and Nike have agreed to part ways. It is reported as a mutual decision. I don't have enough information on the situation to really say that it's mutual, but because we know better than that, right?
Yeah, but that's just polite wording there. That's all. That's just polite wording.
So my initial thoughts are this. What has happened in media and sports is that these athletes have elevated to this point that people place these unrealistic expectations of them. And then sometimes they go into partnerships without understanding who these people are, who these athletes are. There was a time where before a company would sponsor an athlete or sign a deal with an athlete, they had a long history of some type of behavior in order for them to say, that looks like our guy. That just doesn't happen in sports now. They're just trying to get to the most popular person first and strike these long-term deals. And then when that person shows you who they actually are, whether you like them or not, all of a sudden you see these companies part ways from these athletes. And I believe Kyrie Irving has over the years shown that he marched to the beat of his own drum, from his views on the earth, religion, the vaccine, and all of these different things. So for this to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I understand that business is business. And if they feel like he's affecting their bottom line, it's going to be solo on Kyrie. And I think that's what happened. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to personal choices, right? Um, I think we can all agree that what Kyrie had to say or what he had to post would possibly offend some people. He has a right to believe what he wants to believe. It's not necessarily something that I subscribe to. But ultimately, he thought what he was doing was for the betterment of his people, whether it's Black people or Native American people, to highlight some of the things that white supremacy, to highlight some of the things that being a Black man here in the US has done to a lot of people. So I can appreciate his messaging from that standpoint. But ultimately, in certain circumstances, you have to make difficult choices. You have to make difficult choices when it comes to what you're willing to stand up for and what you're willing to, let others fight the battle for. And while I don't think that the requirements that were given to Kyrie were fair when it came to the things he had to do to get back on the court, I think the suspension was reasonable, because here's what I'll say, right? If you work for anybody, and a lot of us do, some of us work for ourselves, but ultimately we all have somebody to answer to.
Right.
If you directly insult or offend the people you work for, you're going to run into problems. And from my understanding, the NBA commissioner, who has a huge deal with Nike to provide their clothing. I don't know if anybody has an NBA jersey that they bought in the last 5 to 10 years, but it has a Nike sign on it, if it's a real jersey. The commissioner, Adam Silver, he's Jewish. So we can't go as an NBA athlete posting in what most would consider an anti-Semitic film and not expect reprimand or not expect punishment when the quote unquote boss that runs your league, that's helped fund you and pay you millions of dollars, along with your talent, along with your ability to play the game of basketball, but gives you the stage to do so.
Right.
You directly offend by posting something, and then not just posting it, but not seeming apologetic once people have explained to you, or people have tried to explain to you, why what you may have posted might have offended them.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Nike is going to do what's in the best interest of making themselves money. I'll give you a perfect example in this situation. Kyrie Irving, his shoe deal is up, right? They basically cut it 11 months short. It was supposed to be up in October. There were rumors before this even happened that Nike and him were planning to go separate ways because of creative control issues. Right. Kyrie wanted to have more involvement with the product line. He wanted to have more involvement with shoe design. He wanted to have more involvement with, just whatever the details may have been. And he was not allowed that based on his contract that he signed back when he was a rookie, because he's been on that contract with Nike since then. But Nike is going to do, and they just announced this, there's rumors, there's not a formal announcement been made by Nike yet, but Devin Booker and Ja Morant are both going to get signature line shoes. So when one guy leaves, in Nike's mind now, I'm giving you Nike's perspective, when one guy leaves, another guy comes in. I think we would all agree that Ja Morant specifically, let's just take Ja Morant, for example, because this is the point guard, the same type of player, so to speak. Kyrie's fading out. Now, he's still a great player, but he's not the player he once was.
Back nine.
And he probably won't be the same player he once was anymore. But Ja Morant is the new it kid. Ja Morant is the dude everybody goes to see. The Memphis Grizzlies are on TV 2-3 times a week for games. So Nike's thinking, okay, why would we fight against some of our customers that potentially could leave us, as far as support is concerned, for one guy when we got another guy that we can sign who doesn't have any of those issues right now, who doesn't
Right.
have any of those problems that we have to deal with. That's the thing people have to realize. Nike's a corporation that's all about making as much money as possible, and anything that's going to get in the way of that, that's something that they're not going to be willing to deal with, or something that they're going to try to avoid as much as possible.
Agree. And that marries to the point that I made at the beginning as well, that ultimately a business decision was made, whether Kyrie 100% agreed with it or not. You know what I mean? It's like he put himself in a position to be pushed to the side, and there's always another group waiting in the wings. There's always that next superstar. There's always that next opportunity to gain the eyes of the people that buy sneakers the most. You know, that's just how it works. And it's unfortunate that he hasn't learned his lesson in regards to, you have to be strategic about the way that you push back. And you got to credit LeBron for the way that he does that. LeBron strategically pushes back. He doesn't fight every battle because he shouldn't. Some battles, It makes more sense for him to fight. Some battles, it's best for him to step back, allow somebody else to step to the forefront and do their thing. And I think that Kyrie just hasn't learned that. I would say he's beyond the back nine of his career, just because of injuries and so many other different things, and his marketability into the next team or whatever the case may be. I just don't see it there. So from a Nike standpoint, it's like, wash your hands, cut bait early, and get out of Dodge, and go ahead and start setting up your next moves. Like you said, the contract was supposed to be up October 1st, 2023. So 11 months early. They're not losing enough for it to matter for them, as big as Nike is. And they get the opportunity to start anew with some young, fresh talent that's going to really show and prove what they're made of. So our next thing we want to talk about and transition into is the Lakers. 8-2 over the last 10 games. I know you rock with the Lakers heavy, so I'm going to toss it to you, man, with this alley-oop. And you tell me what you think about it.
You know, man, it's really interesting because I looked at their record. They started the year 2-10, and they've now flipped it, and they've now won 8 of their last 10. So it leads you to think that they're figuring some things out, that they've done some things drastically different. And I wish I could share this graphic so you guys could see it, but Anthony Davis, I mean, he's been a huge, huge reason for everything that's been going on with them, all the success that they've had. I'm looking here at his last 9 games. I mean, he's at 37, 38, 30, 37, 25, 25, 27, 44, and 55 in his last 9 games, right? And this kind of leads me to think of one thing that I kind of thought about, and I wish I had tweeted it before he went on this run, because I would have looked like a prophet, right? I would have looked like I really knew what I'm talking about.
Right.
But Anthony Davis is every bit as good as Giannis. He's every bit as good as him. There's one difference. There's only one difference. Giannis's motor does not stop, and we mentioned that on our previous podcast. Giannis is 100 miles an hour every single night, whether it's Tuesday night against the Pacers or if it's a Saturday night primetime game against the Warriors.
Right.
He's going to play that game 1,000,000 miles an hour as fast as he can, as hard as he can, for as long as he can while he's out there. And that's something that Anthony Davis has had an issue with. He's had an issue with his consistency when it comes to playing hard and being available. You know, he has a lot of injuries. He has a lot of issues, with his body. But you can see now when he's in and he's right and he's playing up to his potential, this should be Anthony Davis's team now. Truth be told, it should be Anthony Davis's team.
Right.
So I know we got a comment right in at the very end, so we can go back to that just for a second.
Okay. I'm gonna bring it back up.
Yeah, no doubt. Noel says, do y'all think LeBron was right to ask the press why they didn't ask him about Jerry Jones the way they asked him about Kyrie? I mean, I think 100%, because it's just selective, right?
Yeah.
It's selective by media members to ask him about Kyrie because he used to play with Kyrie, and they've had their issues in the past personally.
Right.
And it's ironic that they asked him about that more than once in press conferences. Yet when the Jerry Jones issue came up with the photo of him, out at basically a rally that was protesting
It was like a
integration
segregation
of
situation.
schools,
Yeah.
right? Integration of schools, because he was born in Arkansas, and there happened
Mhm.
to be a school in his hometown where he grew up that
Right.
was integrating. It was one of the first schools in the state of Arkansas that integrated. And he happened to be there in protest. I do think that it was fair for him to ask that question, because you got to be fair on both sides. If you want his opinion, right, about something controversial that offends people from a racial standpoint when it comes to Kyrie, well, everybody knows that LeBron is a Cowboy fan.
Right.
Why wouldn't y'all have asked him about that?
Absolutely. And that was my
That's a great
opinion too.
question.
Why wouldn't? Yeah, excellent question. Being that he's a Cowboys fan, let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, because he's going to have a strong opinion about the owner of his favorite team and being involved in something like that. And the way that the media, they lean so heavy into this Kyrie thing, even when the smoke was starting to clear, they kept fanning the flames, right? But this Jerry Jones thing, it couldn't go away fast enough. You could just see the way that prominent media members were trying not to talk about it. They were trying not to cover it. And it just made you think like, well, this is as important of an issue. This offends a major group too. People have questions. People want to get some dialogue about this, and this needs to be a topic of discussion. And I'm glad that you brought it up, Noel, because it is important that we're able to give our opinion as well. I can't interpret exactly what was going on in the picture, because the picture don't always tell 1,000 words,
Right.
but I can say that it wasn't a good look. And that's a situation where, just like any old tweet that an athlete has brought up 6 years later, whatever, it needs to be addressed prominently and explained, hey, this is what was going on. This was the situation. And then the media needs to take their time and dissect it and break it apart and put it back together like they do issues when it's athletes of color or Black athletes are involved in things. I need to see that same thing, just like, the Brett Favre situation.
Right. Yeah, I'm really surprised that there hasn't been more talked about on that, honestly, like in general. Like, I know that Skip and Shannon did maybe 2 segments on it that I can recall. It's hard for me to say really from the daily debate standpoint how many people have talked about it, but I know for sure it's not been talked about nearly enough when you talk about national media, when you talk about major news, as much as some of the other things that are happening to Black athletes. Because let's keep it 100, man. Humans make mistakes and humans do things wrong. Yeah. And when you're an athlete and you make millions of dollars and you're famous and you have notoriety and clout, as we like to call it now, you're going to get that microscope on you even more so. Right. But it seems like there's something different in the tone and there's something different in the coverage when it comes to some of the Black athletes that do wrong versus some of the white athletes that do some things wrong as well. And that's unfortunate, and that's something that I think eventually will need to change.
I'll share something that's a little bit telling. It's slightly political, I guess, but I don't care about that. I don't care who knows my views. I'm not going to share them here, but I can say this. So I do some contract work at a place, and I go in, and there's a break room, and there's always a TV on the news. Typically, it's on CNN. For whatever reason, you turn TV on, it's already on CNN.
Right.
They have actually really done a couple deep dives on the Brett Favre situation, probably because of the legal ramifications. And they only mentioned the Kyrie Irving situation once. They haven't mentioned the Jerry Jones thing, but they really have talked about this Brett Favre thing. But the thing that makes it the outlier is the fact that there's some legal stuff involved. And there, the misappropriation of funds and money being diverted and directed to places it shouldn't be. So I think that's the only reason. But I thought that was kind of weird, because like you're saying, the mainstream sports media, it ain't getting that kind of coverage besides in passing a couple daily headlines. So I do want to give you the opportunity to get back in to this Lakers topic.
Yeah.
And basically, so from a prophetic standpoint, you were talking about Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I want you to pick up where you left off, man, and get us back in the groove.
Yeah, man. I think Anthony is really just kind of coming into a position that we really expected him to be probably about a year or two ago, to be honest. Like right after the Lakers won the championship in 2020, it was a scenario in which we were thinking, okay, the torch is going to be passed from LeBron to Anthony Davis, and he's going to carry the team and carry the load. And he's going to be the guy that everybody looks to to lead the team in scoring, to be that MVP candidate. And that's what it's going to have to be, right? Because LeBron is now entering his late 30s. And LeBron in his own right is still just, he's ridiculous. I'm not even going to get into that. But, you're 38, playing with dudes who didn't even play or weren't even alive when you played, and you're still able to play at an elite level in a sport that demands you to be athletic. See, That's the one difference I would say that is between what Tom Brady is doing versus what LeBron is doing. Because LeBron still got to guard these dudes. LeBron still got to jump with these dudes. LeBron still got to run with these dudes. And that's completely different. That's completely different than what Tom is being asked to do, which is to facilitate the team, be a leader, get everybody in the right spots, and just not make any mistakes right now, and let the guys around you do the major work for you outside of you just being able to deliver the ball, which we all know that he can do. Right. Exactly. Put the ball where it needs to be and then let them run and do what they got to do. But, man, I will say that it's just interesting because, the Lakers are in a situation where they're not back in the playoff hunt yet. They're still in, 10th place. But I kind of feel like they're hitting their stride. And I think really the win against the Milwaukee Bucks this past week really, really highlighted how good they could be because they were in a game where they were playing a championship contending team. The Bucks are number 2 in the East right now. And while you can win a game on any night against anybody because it's NBA, it's NBA players, they're all professionals for a reason. There's something to the fact that the Lakers went up midway through the second quarter, turned around, lost the lead, and were able to kind of fight back and then make winning plays down the stretch when they had LeBron, AD, and Russ on the court at the same time. Because all of last season, that was the major issue, right? We can't have all 3 of them on the court at the same time. They don't work well together. They run into the same spots. They all want the ball on the same parts of the floor. So it can only be 2 of them on the court at once. But I think people will start eventually to come around to the idea that they can make this work if they can hit shots. And if they can hit shots, they'll have an opportunity to really, really do some damage in the Western Conference, whether that means to go ahead and cut it off, at the first round, or whether it means get to the second round. But we'll see. We'll see.
Definitely going to see how things play out. The team seems to have figured some things out that were definitely problematic in the past. Just looking at the way the scoring has kind of been distributed, guys are figuring out exactly how to play and be a part of something that wins. And I think that that's the most important thing. Just from an athletic standpoint in sports in general, when it's more than one person, and we're not talking tennis, golf, whatever, team sports, that chemistry is so important in finding people that are willing to play a particular position, even if it doesn't serve their personal interests as much as they'd like. You have to be able to step back and say, if I do this, I like the way it feels to win more than I like how it feels to be the star every time. And I think that's what you're seeing with this recent run of the Lakers is they figured out we remember we like winning and we want to keep doing it. So these are the things that need to be done from a strategic standpoint to make that happen. So I really do believe that they're on their way. I feel like the conference has an open door for them to make some strides. What are they, 10 and 12 right now?
I think they're 11 and 12.
Okay. So doing, they're in a prime spot to get on a nice little run, get things going. Like we talked about, Christmas is that telling time. We're quickly approaching Christmas. So if they can head into the new year streaking a little bit and then get to the All-Star break on a nice run and have a nice winning record over that span from now until then, hey, the sky's the limit for what they can do as long as, the players hold up and they can avoid most of the injury bug. I think they'll be good to go. So the next thing we want to kind of talk about here is we're going to get into some boxing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to toss it to you, bro. And you go ahead and get us warmed up. I'm going to get some graphics on the screen and we're going to get it going.
No doubt, man. It's been a great time in boxing just because there's been a lot of great fights over the last probably since the summer, really, I would say, probably since like June. There's been a lot of great fights. There's been a lot of really, really good cards. And we are having some things to look forward to that pre-podcasts that are coming up this coming weekend that we're going to talk about as well. But officially, it's been announced. And it's a question that I wanted to pose to you, T, man.
Okay.
Gervonta Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia.
Yes,
That
sir.
PPV card, that pay-per-view card, has officially been announced.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to get your thought on just the card as a whole, because they've announced the 4 pay-per-view fights, and whether or not you think that it is pay-per-view worthy. Because there's always the debate between the boxing community about whether a fight is pay-per-view worthy or not, based on value, based on matchups, based on financial situations for these networks. Do you think that this is a pay-per-view worthy fight now that you've seen the 4 main fights on the card?
To be honest, I do. I actually believe this card is worth pay-per-view money. Now, my primary issue is going to be exactly how much money. So with who they have lined up, let's talk about the stars on the roster, right? You've got Gervonta Tank Davis. You've got Jerron Boots Ennis. These are the co-mains. You've got Demetrius Andrade, a.k.a. Boo Boo. Yeah. And then you've got Rashidi Ellis. These are going to be on the pay-per-view portion, the televised portion. It's $59.99, $69.99. Take my money.
It's I can tell you right now, and they haven't announced the pricing yet, but I'm gonna tell you right now, with all those 4 dudes on there, that's an $80 pay-per-view.
For sure.
You can forget about it. It's $79.99 all day long. No need to wonder. It's not gonna be $60. You know what was $60? Regis Prograis against Jose Zepeda last weekend. Ooh. That was $60. Okay.
Man.
This fight, no. There's no way they're gonna have all 4 of those dudes on the same card and only charge people $60, $50. It's not happening.
Ain't no way. And what's crazy is, they stacked the deck for sure. And it's the first card of the year for them. So they stacked the deck. And I'm thinking it might be like $89.99, to be honest. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think I paid $89.99 for the Spence card when he fought Ugas. I can't remember.
No, that was $79 too.
$79.
That was $70. It was $79. And Floyd really had the Maypac, not the Maypac fight. The
Maypac was $100.
The Mayweather McGregor fight, Maymac, was $74.99.
Okay. So, maybe that's what I paid for Arrow. $74.99. I can't remember. I had to check my receipt, but this card is going to be somewhere in that ballpark. We might see that 89, bro. I don't know, but I think it's a good card. And what's funny is the Petersons are on the undercard, probably going to show up on YouTube. Lamont Peterson. And there's a young fighter. His name is escaping me right now that Tank was talking about. That's also going to be on the undercard.
Those fights haven't been formally announced yet. They're not on BoxRec yet. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because I was looking. I believe it's Jaleel Hackett. It's one of them, and I don't see it on his BoxRec yet. But I did hear Tank mention it in that Chicken Talk interview. So, or the Q&A. So I feel like he said he was just trying to do something for the local dudes, and they did a really good job of bringing some people together that's going to make for a really interesting night of boxing. I'm going to be tuned in. January 7th, I'm putting my phone up, and the most I do is tweet every other fight. But I'm going to be tuned in because I feel like it's a great night for boxing. And I think overall, if it's $74.99, I'll take it. More than that, I'm going to begrudgingly spend the money. But because we do cover sports, I'm going to go ahead and invest in it because I do want to see it firsthand. I don't like to watch highlights. But I can say that, please, hey, Showtime, PBC, y'all good folks over there. Hey, man, $74.99. Y'all will sell a bunch of them. Yeah. Now, here's something I want to throw at you before we get into maybe the fight breakdown or analysis. So we've talked about this on Twitter, you, myself, and other people, and we've talked about the financial state of PBC and Showtime. And do you think that this card is a representation of Showtime placing pressure on the PBC to deliver big-time fight cards for 2023? And a second part of that question would be, do you think it'll be enough to make it go forward that way and really benefit fans?
Well, here's what I'll say. And kudos to Showtime, right? I don't give out compliments to PBC and Showtime freely, willy-nilly, because I have a lot of issues with some of the things that they do business strategy-wise, some of the fights that they've blocked, some of the fights that they've not allowed to happen. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, at some other point. But I will say this, very, very, very strategic. If you look at up and down that card, right, when it comes to the guys that have been announced, Tank, right, the fight's in D.C., so you got to think geographics here. The fight's in D.C., Tank is from Baltimore.
Mhm.
Jaron Ennis is from Philly. Demetrius Andrade is basically from Rhode Island, Boston area. And Rashidi Ellis is from Massachusetts, Boston area as well. So
Mhm.
the four main guys on that fight card are all hometowns within a 2-3 hour range from where they're hosting that fight. All of them. All the guys that's going to be on that card. So it's very strategic, very smart of them to put those guys in that position. Not to mention, like you mentioned, if the Peterson brothers do get non-TV slots, both of those guys are from DC as well.
Right.
So very, very strategic on Showtime's part. Kudos to them for having that kind of that wherewithal to know, hey, if we want to get the most out of this, if we want to fill this arena up, which they are going to be a Capital One arena. It's the arena that the Wizards play at. Used to be called the Verizon Center back in the day. We got to make sure that we use some hometown guys.
Mhm.
But here's my problem, and here I'll go ahead and answer the post question initially first. Question that we posed to each other: is this PPV worthy? Is it a pay-per-view worthy fight card to me? For me, yes, because I'm a boxing fanatic. I'm a guy that's gonna buy a pay-per-view as long as it's a good fight that I'm interested in watching. It doesn't have to take 3 or 4 great fights on there. But what I will say is I don't see this fight card doing more than 250,000 pay-per-view buys for one reason and one reason only. If you look down this line and you look at these matchups, Gervonta's in a fight that he's heavily favored to win, whether you think that that's true or not. Jaron Ennis is in a fight that he's heavily favored to win, which most people are going to agree he probably will.
Yeah.
Demetrius Andrade is in a fight he's heavily favored to win, which a lot of people may have trepidation about Demetrius just because he hasn't fought in a long time. But if he's on his game, he'll win that fight 10-2, 11-1, unanimous decision. Fairly straightforward fight for him. And Rashidi Ellis, he's in a fight that he probably has the closest fight of the matchups on the card. But Rashidi Ellis should come through that fight, and he's going to be favored.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate part about this card, because I think of a pay-per-view card being a fight card that I have serious doubts who's going to win. I have serious doubts going into that fight. I look at the top-ranked card, like we mentioned previously, that's going to be happening this Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fight card that includes a lot of guys, right, in quote-unquote one-sided fights or fights that they're expected to win on network television.
Yeah.
That I don't have to pay an additional price for.
Right.
I pay my $5.99 ESPN Plus membership. I get to fight.
Let me get your login. I'm just kidding.
Listen, man. I'll slide it to you. I'm not gonna post it on here, but I'll slide it to you. I don't want too many people on it at once.
You know.
But I'm happy to slide it because it lets me do multi streams at the same time. So it's all good. But listen, man, like that's the problem that I see with boxing, and that's also the problem I see with American boxing. And if I take it to the business side, which you asked me earlier, do I think that this reflects Showtime's plans going forward? No. And one reason only. Because Showtime isn't really putting up any money for this fight to happen.
True.
Because all they've done is they've taken a fight card that they could have paid all these fighters to have this fight on their network. Mm-hmm. And they've said, PBC, we'll give you the TV slot. We'll give you some commercial time to put it, between our programming, right? And we'll give you basically the infrastructure to host the fight. Y'all pay the production and make your money back from the fans because we're not paying these fighters.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's definitely an economic approach. But I think that, like you said, even if it does 250, if given the recent history of Showtime pay-per-views, Errol Spence versus Ugas notwithstanding, the numbers have not been great, even though it's been reported. Right.
They've all been bad.
But, it's going to at least say there is some interest in boxing on this network. And I think that that's what 2023 is going to be about, because by the end of the year, the people at Paramount that are in charge of what happens with Showtime Championship Boxing and boxing on that platform are going to be looking at, if you give us good quality content in terms of sports, boxing specifically, it can be productive. It can make some money and it can bring some extra eyes to our platform. What will probably happen the week of What's going to be announced shortly after Christmas is a 7-day trial that's going to kick off right before New Year's, which is going to, or 10-day trial, something like that, just like they did, or 30-day trial. They did it right before Jamel Charlo's undisputed fight. They did it right before Errol Spence and Ugas fought. They did a 30-day trial to get people to already be on the platform before they actually started to sell pay-per-views or whatever the case may be. That's how Jamel got those streams that he did. I think we're going to see something similar at the top of 2023. And I think that all of these are going to be barometers every quarter. They're going to say, hey, we need one major event every quarter. We're not going to provide ways to do all these pay-per-views. Every quarter, we need a great event from you. And then if you're being productive and making money, then we're going to invest in keeping this brand with some changes. You're going to have to pay these fighters less. You're going to have to do more localized shows. If you want to fight in Vegas, we need Vegas dudes. You want to fight in Cali, we need Cali dudes. So the cards are going to look a little bit different. I just don't know how those matchups are going to look. But I do agree with you that it's a low investment situation for Showtime.
From Showtime.
For Showtime, for sure.
And here's my angle on it too. I got a perfect example of how they could have made this a pay-per-view card with just one easy flip. You could have kept everybody that's on the card. Rashidi Ellis, Jaron Ennis, Demetrius Andrade, Gervonta Davis. You could have kept all those guys on the card. Why is Rashidi Ellis not fighting Jaron Ennis? Why?
That's a good point.
They're on the same fight card.
Yeah.
Neither one of those dudes is very active. Talked about how we needed to see Jaron Ennis be more active. And really, realistically, that fight, and I've been through this on Twitter a few times, but why didn't Jaron Ennis and Rashidi Ellis fight this year? Why are they both waiting till next year to fight, right? They could have fought this year. Showtime doesn't have anything announced. They still haven't announced the December 17th card. Yeah. They have nothing that was announced in November, nothing that was announced in December. The only thing that's in stone that they say is going to happen on their network as far as boxing is concerned is this pay-per-view card, which if anybody knows the business of boxing, and I've had a chance to kind of look into it in the last 5 years after really following the sport, pay-per-view cards don't really cost the network anything but the TV time and the commercial slots.
All right.
Because all they're doing is they're taking the bill that they would have footed on network television to pay the fighters and handing it over to the fans and saying, y'all pay for this. Because we're not.
No, I agree with that.
It's unfortunate because you could have easily made that a pay-per-view card if you put Jaron Ennis, Rashidi Ellis, co-main event, Demetrius Andrade opens the pay-per-view card. When you're the third fight down the card, yes, it'd be nice to see him fight somebody well-known. Yes, it would have been nice to see him fight somebody, a little bit more highly touted, even if it was a Terrell Gachet or somebody along those lines, somebody a little bit more familiar.
Yeah.
But you could have had him fight who he's fighting now, and you could have just made Rashidi Ellis against Jaron Ennis. That's a great fight. That's a fight that's very interesting. That's a great co-main event. And Hector Luis Garcia is going to be what he is, right? He's going to be a decent boxer, well-schooled, Dominican school of boxing.
Yeah, he's going to bring the fight.
He's going to bring it, as long as he can, but everybody expects that Tank should win this fight. That's why he's agreed to have this fight before the real fight that everybody wants to see, which is the Ryan Garcia fight. So that's my opinion. I'm going to buy it. Do I think that it's going to be fully worth my 74, 75, $80? No.
Probably not.
Because I think I know the results of all these fights. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. That 1 p.m. NFL game that you watch. You're not really invested in it, but because you love football so much, you're gonna watch it because you're just waiting for that 3:30 game to come on. You're waiting for that Sunday night football game to come on. So
Wait a minute.
Just happen to just sit there and watch it.
Wait a minute, Cali fam. Keep in mind, I'm an NFC South guy. We play at 1 o'clock. Well, noon our time. Yeah. So
those are big games to you. But I'm saying when the Saints have a big game, y'all don't play at 1 o'clock.
We play at
y'all play the 3 p.m. slot.
For sure. Game of the week.
Y'all play the Sunday night slot when y'all have a big game to play, right?
Yeah, definitely. We get that premium game of the week. I agree with you that would have been a good fight. Definitely increase the pay-per-view value. I know that I follow Bozy Ennis on YSM Media, and he just wasn't interested. He said because of where Rashidi Ellis is ranked and because they're trying to stay in line for certain titles, they want to just keep a certain position. And they've noted this this fight against, it's like Chizetskin is Boots'
Karen,
opponent's name,
yeah,
and
Karen Chizetsky, yeah.
Chizetskin, something like
Yeah,
that.
he's dude from the Ukraine. He's
Yeah,
ranked, let me see where he's
he
ranked.
like 28th or something, I
He's
thought.
ranked
But
26th
yeah,
in the world at 147. It's not
right.
a bad opponent. My argument is if that's your co-main event, it needs to be better than that.
So which ladder is Rashidi Ellis on? Because this is going to be an IBF interim title fight, meaning it kind of forces Spence to fight him early next year if he doesn't sign the book, if he doesn't sign the dotted line with Terrence Crawford. So I don't know where Rashidi Ellis is on the IBF rankings, because that's probably the only key. The IBF made that agreement. Listen, we'll go ahead and grant you mandatory status because he's already petitioned, but you're going to have to fight one fight that we can note as a interim title fight. So now we elevate you to kind of like a regular champion. And now Spence is kind of forced to fight you so we could tighten the belts and liquidate. That's the only sense I can make of it. Because otherwise, like you said, that would have been the best fight on the card. Hands down.
And the only thing that I can say to that to you is honestly, it just seems like PBC is putting Jaron Ennis in stand. Well, not PBC. I shouldn't say that because Jaron's not signed to PBC. He's actually just got a TV deal with Showtime. They're just putting him in a soft position to kind of stall right now to see if they can get the Errol Spence Terrence Crawford fight to happen. And if they can't get that fight to happen, then their next resort will be to see if they can try to get Errol Spence to sign and do a Jaron Ennis fight. I'm going to give you my opinion, and I'll only give it to you real quick so we can get to our fan question here.
Okay.
I don't think that Errol Spence would fight Jaron Ennis because there's too much to lose and not enough to gain from that fight. I think that it's a very, very, very difficult fight for Errol because not only is it a switch hitter like Bud, not only is it a guy that's well-schooled like Bud, but it's a guy who's bigger than Bud. It's a guy who's going to be arguably punching just as hard as Bud does that you're going to have to face and deal with. And that's difficult. That's a lot to ask at a weight that he's probably not all that comfortable making. I know he said he made the weight a lot better. I know he said that he had a dietitian his last fight, so he made the weight a lot better. But there's no denying that he's 31 going on 32.
Yeah.
And he's probably needing to move up to 154. The only reason, truthfully, I think he's even still down at 147 is to see if he can try to fight for undisputed. Otherwise, I don't think that fight happens, which is unfortunate because you got to really think about it. Spence hasn't fought an IBF mandatory since 2017.
Yeah.
Why hasn't the IBF required Spence to either vacate the belt or fight a mandatory? They've done that with numerous other guys right after they became undisputed or unified titles to earn the IBF belt. And Spence has had the IBF belt the longest. That's the first belt he ever won.
First belt, yeah.
He's had one mandatory in basically 5 years. Yeah. And I think that that's problematic in boxing as well when we have guys moving up these ranking slots. And when an undisputed fight doesn't happen, which it didn't happen this year, the next fight that should be in line right now shouldn't be a Keith Thurman mandatory when the WBC wasn't next in line. It was the IBF. It should have been Jaron Ennis. You fight him or you drop the belt. We can get to your question now. AXL says, guys, what do you think PBC will do with Andre after this one? It's simple, man. It's real obvious. If you've been watching boxing, if you've been following the tea leaves, so to speak, or the writing on the wall, there's only one reason for Demetrius to go over to PBC, and it's for one of three options. It's the David Benavidez, Caleb Plant winner. If and when that fight happens, which I just actually this morning watched an interview by Fight Hub with Marcos Villegas. I'll actually share it with you, T, so you can watch it later. David Benavidez's father did an interview with Fight Hub, basically talking about the negotiations and some of the issues they had with getting the Caleb Plant fight over the line. That fight doesn't even have a date yet. It doesn't have a date. It doesn't have a venue. All they've done is David Benavidez has signed the tentative agreement that he will fight him next. So if they do get that fight over the line, Andre will be lined up for that because he will have already fought in 2023 in January. Or, which I think is the less likely option, is a Jermall Charlo fight if Jermall decides to move up to 168 gets a stay busy fight in, which there's rumors going around that he's still in February going to fight Maciej Sulejewski. That's the guy he was supposed to fight in June. He supposedly got injured, quote unquote injured, but was seen in a club a couple of days after. I'm not going to get into that. But
talk about it.
But listen, man, I've never had my back hurt and go to the club a couple of nights after. That's never happened. I've never had a back injury. And then now I'm going to go, I'm in the dance, I'm doing my dance at the club. I've never had that happen. So ultimately, those are going to be his two options. It's going to be the Caleb Plant, David Benavidez winner if they're able to get that fight signed and done this spring.
Yeah.
Or Jamal Charlo if Jamal can fight in February. Because you got to think they'd be on the same schedule. Demetrius would fight in January, Jamal would fight in February, and then they could do the fight. The question is, both of those dudes are going to want a lot of money. Both of those dudes are probably going to end up having that fight on pay-per-view. And as far as I know, Showtime has not done any pay-per-view fights that didn't include a world title in the main event. So whether it was a secondary world title or a world title full version.
You said you said Showtime? Okay. Because
Showtime and PBC that I know of have not done a pay-per-view card that the main event was not for some type of world title, secondary or full version. Not that I know of.
Yeah, because I know Fox Ortiz Ruiz was Fox, right? And that was, I think that was just like an eliminator. Correct. But it wasn't a title. Yeah, it wasn't PBC Showtime. Okay, you're right. I do agree with you that that's probably the lineup. As far as just Demetrius Andrade is over there to start to get some fights at 168.
Easy.
And just wait out Canelo, because I just don't see him really defending the 168 undisputed titles. I think he'll just drop them at some point and go do something else. I think we're starting to see the beginning, I think, of the farewell tour for Canelo. I don't think he wants to do this a whole lot longer because he is able to write his own check and make his money. And I can see him kind of starting to fade away. Now, that, in my opinion, is enough to say that if they keep these guys busy, even though plenty of them are at advanced ages, they're all actually, most of them are older than Canelo.
Other than David, they're all 30 plus.
Yeah,
Caleb's 30. Demetrius is 30. Jamal is 31. They're all 30 plus. And that's what's funny. People think that Canelo is old. Now, Canelo might be old because he's had a lot of fights.
In ring years,
Canelo and Spence and Jamal and Jamel and Plant, they're all the same age. They're all 31, 30, 32.
Facts.
They're all that age range.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold off on what you said as far as Canelo, taking a bow out until I see how he looks coming off of his surgery.
Injury. Okay.
Because, yes, he didn't look as dominant in the Triple G fight, but I will say this. If Jamal fights Triple G and wins a unanimous decision, just like Canelo, if Caleb Plant, if David Benavidez, if Demetrius Andrade, if any of them did exactly what Canelo did in the fight with Triple G, would we be saying the same thing? Would we be saying he's on the decline?
Probably not. But I think so my argument comes from a place of the ring years. I mean, Canelo has 60 plus fights.
He started. He was a professional.
He started at like 15. Yeah, 15, 16. But that wears on you. That's like anything. That's like dudes who been playing football, basketball since elementary school. Them knees hit different when you get into your 30s than the dude that started late teens. You know what I'm saying, or started in college. And I think that we're just seeing the effects of that. It's going to change his game. In order to stick around, he's going to have to evolve. With the way he's already made money, I don't know that the desire to evolve is going to be there. And that's where I guess my point of contention lies with Canelo. And I like him. I mean, I really enjoy when he's on his game. I enjoy watching him fight when he's not getting stuck in his ways, because I feel like he's a good strategist in the ring. He understands how to be a ring general, and he does all the things you want in a champion. And he has taken on the challenge of fighting at different weight classes for championships and fighting other champions. You can't take that from him. I just think that is, Father Time is just starting to catch up with him in a different way. These other guys, they're in their 30s and they're having stuff. Boo Boo's been injured. Jamal's been injured. Caleb hasn't, but okay. But Caleb hasn't that we know of, right? But
Caleb actually was injured. I don't know if you remember, but before the fight with
before Durrell,
the defensive, was it It was whoever he fought right before he fought Canelo. He had hand
Okay.
surgery. He broke his
Okay.
hand. Yeah, he
Okay.
had hand
See,
surgery.
so you've got injuries there, and these guys are all 30 plus. But all of that to say, and when we're gonna do a whole show probably on that anyway, because I do want to really spend some true time talking about Canelo and his impact on boxing overall, because he is a living icon in the
We can talk
sport.
about that
So
for an hour, man.
yeah, exactly. He could get his own show really. So
Yeah,
I just
literally.
I just know that as far as 168, because right now them dudes is kind of like back and forth. We don't know where they're fighting besides Benavidez, who's definitely at 168 for sure. And Plant. Um, I'm I'm thinking that Andrade is going to stay at 168. Jamal's going to go ahead and move up. And then you're going to see PBC trying to line it up, because if they're seeing the tea leaves, like you mentioned, they're seeing Benavidez is about to take over. So if at some point Canelo's no longer the champ and he moves on, now you've got a dude who probably could hold the belts for like 5 years. And now you could have all these fights where he's fighting all these up and coming challengers, except maybe what? You got Morrell coming up. They're probably setting up something where you've got two young dudes that are on a collision course. And I think that's what they're seeing now. So they're trying to get guys in-house that can line up these really marquee fights. Comment on the screen, Axel. Jamal fight is cooler, in my opinion, but it needs to be for a belt.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that goes to what I said earlier, right? We talked about like if Showtime is going to do a Jamal Demetrius Andrade fight, it has to have a belt. But that's going to lead me back to the previous comments that I've made on Twitter and I've made on social media before. Why didn't we get that fight at 160?
Right.
When they both had belts at 160.
Side of the street, man.
I'm not trying to hear that, man. I'm not trying to hear it, bro. I just can't.
Know.
Like, we watch other sports where stuff gets required and stuff gets demanded and there's no getting around it. Could you imagine if the Falcons said, nah, we ain't playing we ain't playing the Ravens because they in the AFC and they play their games on CBS. That's what we're talking about here. That's literally what I know that boxing is different. I understand that the boxing forum is in a different space.
We need a real league.
But here's the problem with why it's that way. When promoters are able to siphon their fighters, their best fighters, to only fight against their other guys within their network, and you don't ever get the best of the best unless it's these miracle fights. When you talk about Fury Wilder, when you talk about Mayweather Pacquiao, when you talk about Lennox Lewis fighting Mike Tyson, those are the only three instances where the two biggest American players in boxing did co-promotions, like true co-promotions, where like you get to show the fight on your network, we get to show the fight on our network, and we'll make our money based on where the fans go to buy the fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's the fairest way, and it should be that way more often. Because a lot of the people that want to buy the fight on DAZN, when Demetrius Andrade used to fight on DAZN, that's where they would buy it. If that's the commentary team that they like, if that's the preference that they have, if that's the way that they want to watch the fight, and they want to see it from that angle, that's the way you do it. And then all the people that like Showtime, if they like Mauro Ranallo, if they like all of the guys on there, if they like what's the dude, my man that does the hosting, can't remember his name right now, Brian Custer. Brian Custer.
BC.
If they like Brian Custer, then that's where they're going to go to watch the fight.
Yeah.
But the problem is that these networks get in the way and want to have all the money to themselves, that they want to demand that if a fight's going to happen, it can only happen on their network or it won't happen at all.
For sure. Now, that's problematic for sure.
You could have had a Jamal and Demetrius. Realistically, you could have had a trilogy between the two of them if you do that fight when it was supposed to happen. They've been talking about that fight since 2018. And all of the people that want to jump in the comments and they want to sit here and say, oh, Andrade dropped out of the fight with Jermell, so Jamal is taken up for him by not fighting Andrade. Okay. Let's use that logic realistically. You don't like somebody, so you don't want to fight them? Cool. But what are you doing instead?
Right.
If you're not going to fight him, cool. I don't have no problem with that. That's your personal choice. But if you're not going to fight him, what are you doing instead? That's
Waiting
all
on
I want to
Canelo.
know.
Waiting on Canelo. That's all.
Like David's doing, like Caleb did, like uh, John Ryder, like Zach Parker was doing before him, like Triple G did for the last 2 years, like
Yeah.
Jamal is doing. I'll give you another one. Errol was waiting on that fight too. Did
Yeah.
you read the offer that PBC and Al Heyman sent to Canelo before he decided to sign and do the Bivol fight? Do
Oh
you
yeah.
know that that offer included an Errol Spence catchweight fight at
Oh yeah.
162 pounds?
162, 164, something like that. Yeah. I did peep that.
That
Yeah.
leads me to think maybe Showtime wasn't as keen as working with Crawford initially as they are now because they know that Canelo's not an option for Spence.
Yeah.
Because
But
why would you offer that? That's not
from
for
a
any belts.
from a business standpoint, so at the end of the day, if I'm the business, I actually don't care about the fighters. And I don't care about the sport unless it's making me money. And I believe that, the people that make those decisions aren't boxing heads. Those are executives that look at the budget, the bottom line, what's going to bring in the most money. Literally, that's the only thing that's controlling boxing right now. People that care about dollar signs over quality of fights. And that's why we see so many cards full of dudes fighting. You'll see 3 4 fighters on the card that should be fighting each other. They're fighting
We
4 other
we
people.
just talked about it. The
Exactly.
Devontae Davis pay-per-view.
So when you think about something like that, it's like
Uh,
the people that control the money are really controlling the narrative. And the unfortunate narrative is Canelo would bring more eyes, more visibility, more streams to their network, more pay-per-views, and we're going to get him for 2 or 3 fights. So we looking at 500,000 plus 3 times because that Triple G fight that not a lot of people really were interested in, to be honest, did over 600 if I'm not mistaken.
that's great business,
So
especially in this market.
exactly, exactly. So when you think about how many streams are stolen and stuff like that, when you look at the opportunity to grab a Canelo and say, dude, we're gonna give you a boatload of money, but we want you to fight these dudes right here, and these are all winnable fights for you. Let's do it. Did that affect their desire to do good business with Crawford at some point previously? More than likely. This last negotiation, I think, was in earnest from both sides. I just think that it took too long to get the deal done. And when that last date passed, Bud was like, I got to get it in this year. I can't let the calendar close without getting it in. So that's why I don't consider that ducking. And we're not even talking about that. But I did want to address the fact that I felt like the negotiations were in earnest and they all wanted to do they all want to get in on the Canelo lottery. They all want payday.
Right.
What's
Yeah.
Brenda talking about?
Brenda has a great point, and I've already mentioned this because I've done this with a different weight division. But you do an independent Super Six with back-end percentages. Only percentage payouts happen until the final big payout. I think she's just saying basically that nobody gets paid until the end of the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
so that people won't fall out after they have the first round fight and then they don't fight in the rest of the tournament. Ironically, for people that have watched boxing or have gone back and watched historically, Showtime put on the Super Six at the super middleweight division in 2009. That's the one that Andre Ward won. It's what pushed Andre Ward to get that big network deal that he ended up getting from HBO. It's what ended up leading him to becoming a much more notoriable fighter, was because he won that tournament. Now that tournament started with a lot more big names in it than it ended up having at the end because of injuries and some other things. But ultimately, I think and we'll talk about this in another topic, and it'll be awesome for us to get to have some dialogue with some boxing guys about what's 1 or 2 or even 3 things that they would want to see changed in the game of boxing.
Right.
But I think the one for me would be kind of to what Brenda's point is that you have these mandated tournaments or these mandated bouts that have to happen between champions. If anybody's been watching or following the women's game, in the last 6 months, there's been 2, count them, 2 undisputed fights that have been mandated by boxing organizations. That included the WBA champion having to fight a unified champion to become undisputed.
Absolutely.
If you can do that with the women's fights, you can't sit here and tell me you can't do that with the men's fights. You can't tell me that. So I think that's an awesome idea, Brenda. I think that if you take the first 6 months to get mandatories out the way every year, January to June is for mandatories. July to December is for unifying mandates. And everybody who doesn't have a belt, they're doing their eliminators during that final 6 months. I think boxing would be in a great, awesome place. Awesome place.
For sure. And I absolutely agree that a format that gets guys to box, that gets guys in the ring on a consistent basis. And you just have to figure out a way to like you said, get the mandatories out of the way. You reserve a part of the year. Hey, mandatories later in the year, we're going to see actual fights where we're getting the rankings moved. What I think is an idea that might be useful is some more organization between the sanctioning bodies. Now, it's not the most beneficial thing for them, because if they can make their titles seem more important than somebody else's, then
people will fight for them more often.
Exactly. And you start to look at the greed that comes in. The WBC and WBA are most guilty. The WBO typically has 2 champions at a time. If a fighter has defended the belt, I think it's 6 times now, or it might be 5, they become elevated to super champion. And the only thing that happens is they get more time between mandatories. It goes from 12 months to 18 months, gives them a chance to fight other fighters besides in the rankings.
It also allows them to move up in weight or move down in weight and become an immediate mandatory.
Exactly. So I like the way the WBO does that, even if I call it the top ranked belt. That said, I like what they're doing.
Cool.
The IBF, I think, is the next in line for fairness outside of what's going on with Spence. He's the only one that's been getting special treatment, I'd say, but he's also been injured 24 months of his reign. So he's had
Let me add one more person in there for you to think about.
Who's that?
Jermell.
When's the last time he did IBF? Was that his first belt?
Jermell won the IBF when he fought Jason Rosario. Okay. Jason Rosario already had a mandatory dude that stepped aside so that he could unify.
Okay.
The guy who he was supposed to fight, Jason, signed an agreement with PBC that when the fight was done between Jason Rosario and Jermell, Jermell would get the opportunity, or the fighter, the guy's name.
It's not J-Rock, was it?
IBF, huh? No, it's not J-Rock. It's a foreign guy. I can't remember the guy's name.
Okay, I'm checking.
I have to look it up later, and we'll talk some more about it, obviously. But mandated that he would be the next mandatory. But that never happened. And he had 2 Brian Castano fights, becomes undisputed, and we still don't have a mandated title fight for the guy who signed to be stepping aside 3 fights ago, when Jermell's fought 3 times since then. Yeah. The IBF used to do this, and they pick and choose, and that's the thing that's interesting. They pick and choose because they're on the ball with certain people, but not so much with other people. And other people, they all happen to be from the same promotional company right now.
Yeah.
And that's the odd part to me.
So I would say on Jermell, it's starting to come back, and I do recall. So obviously unification / undisputed, because it was unifying to become undisputed. Those will trump. They've all made an agreement between the organizations, between the bodies, to let that trump. They'll put mandatories aside. Obviously, that one ended in a draw the first time. So then they come back. Castano, here's what also delayed it. They were supposed to fight in February this year. Yeah, but Castano pulled out due to, I think, a back injury. No, he hurt his arm. He hurt his arm.
No, it was his bicep. He hurt his bicep.
Okay, yeah. He hurt something on his arm. So they ended up fighting in June, the rematch. So I don't know that Jermell would have fought the guy who stepped aside. Yeah. In place of that, had he fought
Akram Murtazaliev is his name, Russian dude. Okay. He's number 1 with the IBF.
Kudos to you.
Looked him up.
The way you roll that name off with no problem. Kudos to you, bro.
Akram Murtazaliev. He was made mandatory. June 26th of 2021. It's been 15 months.
Oh wow!
He was made mandatory. I'm looking at the website, IBF website right now.
So that right there is in itself showing that. So there has been some special treatment. That said, for the most part, though, the IBF has been pretty
Oh
close
yeah,
to sticking to the script
yeah.
with enforcement. And there's been at least some reasonable questions to why, let's say, Spence hadn't fought a mandatory since 2018 against Ocampo, and then Jamel is just now fighting some mandatory with Tim Tszyu, whatever. Still hasn't circled back to the IBF. But otherwise, like when you look at the WBA, they got forced by the ABC to like liquidate some belts.
That's the only
Um,
reason they even doing that, and they
oh, for
still ain't
sure.
finished.
It still
They
ain't
still
fixed
ain't
it
finished.
because they trying to stay in the mix, and it's better to have a title fight with Tank Davis and sell pay-per-views and get big purses off the sanctioning fees, off that title than anything else. And then the WBC, they're just as bad. I don't like that franchise belt, and that duck belt is not good for boxing.
I'm glad it's gone. You know that it's gone now, right? Like it's officially gone.
Okay, see, so at the convention they went ahead and got
No,
rid of it.
it wasn't that they announced it at the convention. It's that all the people who won franchise titles, at least for
Oh,
now, unless they designate somebody else,
okay.
they all actually won the full version of the belt.
Mhm.
That happened when Devin Haney fought Kambosos, because remember they gave it to Loma, and Loma lost to Teofimo, and then Teofimo lost to Kambosos, and
Yeah,
Kambosos lost to Haney.
yeah.
Haney dropped that, so
Okay,
it's not in the lightweight division anymore.
okay.
Um,
Canelo had one at
um,
what, 54 or
Canelo
something?
had one at 160,
60.
but he dropped it when he
Okay,
went to
to
168, so that
68.
doesn't
Okay,
exist.
okay.
And then Juan
There's
Francisco Estrada, who just fought Chocolatito this past weekend, he had the last one, and he and Chocolatito just fought their third fight
yeah,
for the full WBC version of the belt. So they're currently, right now, as we stand now, something
no
might happen
franchise
tomorrow, and we'll
champs.
be back in another position. But the WBC doesn't have a franchise title. It's current.
Excellent. I love it. We need to keep it that way. I hate that belt.
Absolutely.
So the question that I put on the screen at first was, how can we fix boxing? And Brenda said Dana White. So Brenda, who's how do we create a body that's
Can't
going
do
to
it, man.
control four sanctioning bodies? Because what you're saying is you're going to be looking at creating a merger that's bigger than the what was it, the ABA and the NBA,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then or the NFL and the AFL. That's the only way. You're going to have to see an epic merger of sanctioning bodies to decide we're going to unify into this one organization, and we're going to do tournaments at our each organization and then elevate to a level. But you can't make the fighters go one way or another. So just organizing boxing that way would just be really hard.
Yeah. I mean, Dana White has a great business model, but people have to realize, and I don't think everybody does, is that MMA is the sport. UFC is not the sport.
Yeah.
The sport is not UFC. The sport is MMA. There are other leagues with other champions that fight in MMA. Now, I'm not a big MMA fan. I don't follow the sport much at all, really. I mean, I barely watch the major fights every once in a while. But Dana White has essentially done a harder or a stronger version of what the PBC has tried to do, which is to do all in-house fights, make those fights be perceived as the highest elevation of that sport being boxing for this topic. As if, for example, people see the UFC as the NBA. Are there other basketball leagues? Sure, there are other basketball leagues. There's leagues all over the world. Australia, the UK, Africa, there's leagues all over the world. But the NBA is seen as the pinnacle. So that's the place that everybody wants to get to. So when they talk about who's the best player, who's the best team, who's the best period, all those players end up in the NBA. The problem with boxing is that there's no siphonized organization of which league is considered to be the best. And that's the problem, is that you got the Zone that does great fights and has world champions that hold belts, just like the PBC that has world champions that hold belts, just like Top Rank that holds belts, just like Queensberry that holds belts, just like Boxer in the UK that holds belts, just like No Limit Promotions in Australia that holds belts, just like Sanford Promotions in Mexico that holds belts, just like Yvonne Michelle in Canada that holds belts. Like, all of these promoters have their own stable of fighters that typically, if given the opportunity, they'll just keep the fights in-house if they can.
Right.
The only way you're going to get to a point where you see true parity, where you get all of the best guys always fighting each other, is if these sanctioning bodies get together and they mandate these fights between operating or opposing promoters to fight each other. That's the only way that these fights are going to happen, because as everything currently stands, boxing has not been league siphoned. It's just not organized that way. You can be a promoter as long as you get a license. I can promote fights within a year.
Right.
As long as I get a promoter's license, I don't have to be a part of a league. I don't have to have any history of boxing business. I don't have to do anything. I just have to do the requirements that allow me to get a boxing license in a said state or said country. And I can sign 2 fighters and put a fight on and pay them what I want to pay them. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. So the MMA model is great. But what I would say is that the UFC would have to then, if you wanted to be comparing it to boxing, they'd have to do fights with, for example, Bellator. Bellator's on Showtime. They do MMA fights. Those fighters never fight UFC fighters. Those fights never happen.
Right.
So that's the same problem that we deal with in boxing. So don't get that part twisted when it comes to it.
Yeah, it's absolutely rough to try to figure out what can fix boxing outside of a desire of the people that's already involved to find a way to make good money or maybe even great money and maybe pass up on super crazy money in order to get the sport to grow and thrive. Right. I'm a lifelong boxing fan. Over the last several years, I've spent more time learning about the back end because that's important to me. I want to understand why it works, because as a fan on the outside, you get frustrated when the fighters you like either aren't fighting or they aren't getting title shots and you feel like they deserve it. There's so many different things that are at play that make you go, well, why is this happening this way? Like, why doesn't this organization work with this organization? Why doesn't this network and that network co-promote? And all of a sudden we're sitting there watching fights that we don't care about on different platforms. Like, I got to go. So this is what I'm putting out on a regular every month just to make sure I'm able to see all the fights I want to see. It's $19.99 for DAZN, so $21 a month. My ESPN is, for some reason, $9.99. I don't know what you got going on.
I got the grandfathered in price because I got the bundle. I got the bundle, so it's grandfathered in.
See, I got to get that Disney bundle, man, because I don't want them commercials in a minute either on Disney. So, but anyway, it's $10 for that, and then another. I've got the Paramount bundle right now, so I'm getting Paramount and Showtime for about $13. So my grand total to watch as much boxing as I can stand outside the pay-per-view, I'm already in almost $50. And I'm not even seeing the dudes I want to fight each other. I'm over here watching Tank. I'm over here watching so-and-so. Like, I'm going to watch Boots on Showtime, and then I got to have ESPN Plus to watch Keyshawn Davis and Xander Zayas and Jared Anderson. And then I got to go on the Zone to watch Ryan Garcia and Bam Rodriguez. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's so fractured. And if you really get to the root of it, it ain't exactly the sanctioning bodies. It's the networks not willing to work together because it's more money for me to keep these dudes over here. And if I have control of the belts, I can build this stuff as championship boxing and sell it to more casual people. I just think that there's a better way to get the casual fans, better advertising. They're trying not to put the money into advertising and make better ads, more appealing ads. I think that's part of the biggest issue with boxing.
Yeah, I mean, you only see the best fight, the very, very best in these co-promotions when the money to make is so great that it makes everybody enough money to be happy. That's the same reason why they're doing the Tank Ryan Garcia fight now, and they finally were able to get it agreed. But interestingly enough, something that I even found out, which I don't know that it's all the way true yet, we'll find out once they release how you can buy the pay-per-view and when the fight gets formally announced, is that DAZN is not even going to have any production input. So none of DAZN's team is allowed to be on the fight. None of DAZN's team is allowed to host, a formal press conference. So it's not even that this fight is a true co-promotion. The only difference is that DAZN will have access to the broadcast and can sell it on their platform at a discounted rate to their subscribers, which, thank God, because that saves me $20. That's $20 I can use on some chicken wings. I can use that on some pizza, use that on something else, because I already have a DAZN subscription. So I'm only going to have to pay $60. I'm not going to pay for it on Showtime, because on Showtime, that fight's going to be $74, $79.
Yeah.
right off the rip for people that are already on Showtime, which is another interesting thing. Don't you think that they should have done that deal? Showtime's been doing streaming way before DAZN even became a thing. Why do they charge their previously existing subscribers a full pay-per-view cost, the same price that they charge somebody else to buy it on a cable box that never even had a Showtime subscription? That just doesn't
So
make any sense to me.
it
Wouldn't you just
doesn't.
give them a discount?
It doesn't. So here's what discount I found when I ordered the Spence fight. If you already have a subscription directly through Showtime, not through your cable provider, you actually get a discount. If you go through your cable, then you pay whatever the regular is. So they are on to what you're saying, but it's not across the board. It's only for direct streaming service
streaming
subscription.
subscribers,
Now
not
I
cable
need to
subscribers.
see, yeah, I need to see what this looks like when their next pay-per-view comes up that I want to order, because I'm in that bundle deal now. I had Showtime as standalone before.
Right.
Now I'm in a bundle. I don't know if I'm going to get those benefits this time around, but you know what? We'll see how it goes. So, some I want to throw at you. I'm going to open the floor for comments, and I'm going to type that in the chat here in a second. We are open for questions. Before we get out of here, we're running at just over an hour and a half. So I know Q got a family and stuff to do. I got family and stuff to do. So we have one to give you all as much as we can. But so some news that I came across today. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I'm gonna wax philosophical on it for a second. It turns out that Zab Judah and Paulie Malignaggi are involved with the BLK Prime presentation of the Terrence Crawford and David Evanesian fight. What are your thoughts on that choice of personalities by this platform? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I'll say is Zab is definitely a worthy guy to have on because of his experience with the great fighters that he's fought, with the great fighters he's been in with, Kostya Tszyu, Floyd Mayweather. I mean, you don't get much better competition than those two guys alone if you just wanted to just talk about those two fights alone. Paulie is probably from a just a pure broadcasting perspective, one of my favorite boxing analysts to listen to, because he shoots it straight. He's direct in his approach. He's not partial at all, from what I can tell when he watches fights, other than Canelo, because he hates Canelo. That's a whole nother topic.
And Devin.
The dude, and Devin too, for sure. He's partial to Devin too. But I was only speaking about Canelo because I've seen him announce Canelo fights, and he definitely has a partialness to him in his announcement. But everybody else, he's very straight down the middle with him. I think it's a great addition. I think it's awesome that they're using some real boxers. I think that was part of the issue that Triller had when they tried to penetrate the market, was that it didn't seem serious enough. They got, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, the HBO play-by-play guy to sign with them. I can't remember the guy's name.
For Triller?
Yeah, Triller did. They had signed him, but he was the first fight he was supposed to do was going to be the Teofimo Lopez George Kambosos fight that they never ended up doing. They ended up defaulting on it, and they couldn't do the fight. Can't think of his name, but the guy who used to host on HBO, and he was the play-by-play guy for like 30 years. If anybody in the comments knows who it is, please just let me know. I can't. I'm drawing blank right now. But anyway, they got serious about the play-by-play, but they didn't have anybody else. They had, they had like rappers and just random people that were going to be doing the fights, and they had like Barstools. They had like a Barstool Sports type of vibe. Have you seen like Barstool Sports?
Yeah. A little backyard brawls.
Jake Paul. They do. Not Brian Kenny. It's not Brian Kenny. Brian Kenny was on ESPN. Jim Lampley. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. Jim Lampley. Thank you. Jim Lampley had signed a deal with Triller to be their play-by-play guy, and he did a long interview and everything. But he never did end up doing any fights for them, because the Teofimo fight that he said he was only going to do real boxing, he wasn't going to do the whole parody YouTube boxing stuff. The one fight that they got signed that was going to be a real boxing match, that wasn't going to be, just like a kind of just like an entertainment thing, it never happened. It defaulted, and then DAZN got the fight, and then DAZN ended up using their own people. But I mean, I think it's awesome that Black Prime is trying to use some real boxers as play-by-play guys. I think that it's a great opportunity for Paulie to get back into the American market, because a lot of people don't realize this, but Paulie's been doing commentary on Pro Box TV
Yeah.
which does some smaller shows.
Yeah.
Nothing huge, no big names or anything like that. And he did at one point do a lot of Sky Sports fights.
Mm-hmm.
But once he had the issues come up about some comments he made, which is some of the reason that I'm not all the way with Paulie,
Right.
because some of the things he says are uncalled for, some of the things he says are inappropriate, and I don't think they're necessary.
Right.
He lost his position with Showtime. He hasn't been back as a regular analyst for any boxing network really ever since. He does some pro box shows. He does a podcast for Pro Box TV.
Yeah.
But I think that both of those guys are really, really good additions, and it makes you seriously take the fight card seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that from a credibility standpoint, as far as strictly boxing, you really can't find a better setup, because you've got Zab Judah, who's going to do kind of like a fighter one-on-one interview, behind the scenes type of thing. And that's going to be great, because he's not going to be placed into this formal box, and he's going to get the opportunity to talk directly on the level that fighters understand. He's somebody that they all respect. He's the last welterweight undisputed champion. Of course, people are going to look at him and go, okay, I feel comfortable pulling the curtains back a little bit and having this conversation with him.
Super lightweight, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was 140? Okay, I thought it was welterweight. Okay.
I could be wrong, but I thought it was.
He had all three belts.
You're right.
Yeah, he had all three belts at 147 before they start recognizing the fourth.
Yeah, you're right.
So good deal. But so here's how I feel about Paulie. Paulie is like a lot of things in life.
Some good and some bad, right?
You got to take sometimes you're the bug, sometimes you're the windshield.
Yeah.
You just, and it's like, he can be so insightful and so instinctive about what to say and when he says it. And he's pointing out the very specific detail to help the fan understand. A fighter just did this in the ring because of ABC. When he gives his breakdowns and he's being unbiased, it gives you a very clear picture of what's happening, even if you don't have a good visual. Mm-hmm. The problem is when he overly inserts his personal self, that becomes an issue, because he can't get out of his own way.
Right.
That becomes my issue with Paulie Malignaggi. I actually follow him on YouTube. Half the time, it's because I want to hear him say something crazy, and I'm gonna be like, I can't stand this so-and-so. And then the other half of the time, it's like, man, I really want to hear what he thinks about this. And he slowed down on his personal videos, because obviously he's working on that Pro Box platform. I hadn't seen him post anything in a minute with Roy Jones and Tarver. Oh, that's who else is on there. But to close out the point, those are my issues with Paulie. When he inserts too much of himself, it takes away from the quality of analysis that he's given. But Antonio Tarver is going to be on the broadcast with Paulie, and I think that's going to be a good match. Now, I don't know who's going to do like the
they gotta have a play-by-play guy.
Well, they're play-by-play, right?
No, they're color commentary. They're color commentary.
Okay.
The fighters are going to be color commentary. They're going to give you the analysis side. But the play-by-play guys, he's the
true play-by-play.
He's the non-athlete that's going to host the show, keep everything going along, keep everybody flowing, so to speak. Kind of like a moderator, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the fight. It's unfortunate that it's going to be on at a time when we're going to be trying to watch a lot of other guys. Because that whole top-ranked card is going to be something to watch. Again, it's on ESPN Plus at no additional charge for all my people that do have. Paulie's brain doesn't always hear what his mouth says. Yeah, that's pretty true, Brendan. That's fair. That's fair. You know what? I'm gonna be on the contrary on that, and I'm gonna say that he hears what he's saying. He just doesn't care what other people think about it.
You don't give a what.
I don't think he cares, because if he was willing to lose a Showtime gig, that was, I'm assuming, paying him pretty well. And you could see it, man. I mean, if you've listened to any of Showtime's fights in the last year, you see the hole that's been left.
It's bad.
You see the hole that's been left. Like, everybody's good. Brian Custer's great. Mauro Ranallo is awesome. They got
Abner can't do it.
Abner can't do it.
He's can't do it.
Guy. And honestly, I've thought about it, and it's kind of funny because I almost feel like they should have switched Abner and Sean Porter, in my opinion.
I was about to make a comment on Sean Porter. I don't see a lot of
Sean is shopping his stuff around, because Sean is on DAZN every once in a while. Sean is on Showtime. So Sean obviously is not exclusive to anybody right now, which he might like it that way.
He stay politicking for now. I think he wants Fox for some reason, but that's probably not the
Fox ain't
right way
gonna
to
do no
go.
boxing next year though. Fox is
Exactly.
done.
Exactly. But he is big on Fox for whatever reason. They must have treated him good when he was a fighter. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot to distinguish Abner from Sean personally. I just like Sean more
Okay.
because I see him on the podcast. I do know that he can be really insightful, and I think he tries too hard to be an analyst instead of just being a fighter that's telling people what's going on. If he could just get in that bag, he's gonna be there. Brendan McDonald says Bernstein the best. I think. Fair.
Yeah, Al Bernstein is really good
Fair.
too. It's interesting because they have two play-by-play guys because they have Mauro Ranello and Al Bernstein both on the broadcast, and then they'll have a fighter with them. And usually it's Abner right now, but it used to be Paulie.
Used to be Paulie.
And yeah, man. I mean, I think it'll be interesting. It's gonna hurt me a little bit to buy a $60 fight when I really only want to see one fight on the card. But I'm a boxing guy, so I'm gonna do it. You know, when you talk about Crawford Avanesian, because the thing with the boxing is yes, it's foregone conclusion fights, but you don't want to be the guy that didn't buy the fight and then the upset happens and you didn't watch it. That's the worst part. It's like, you know, it's different if it's going to be on Showtime or ESPN. You can go back and watch it later. You can buy it afterwards.
Yeah.
Watch the highlight. You know, Showtime posts their highlights about a day or two after.
The Zone.
The Zone, you can go back and watch. You can go back and buy it later if you want to. Yeah. But with it being on Black Prime, I don't know how that's going to work. Like, they might not have it on there after the fight is over. It might be gone off the abyss. You know,
one and done.
Have to rely on somebody's screen records.
One and done, bro. One and done. So, integrated sports media is carrying it, and you're going to get it on terrestrial, cable, and satellite. But like you said, you don't want to be the guy that miss it. And, bro, listen. Hey, YouTube subscribers, if y'all want us to watch the fight, Cash App is on the screen. But it's really hard to give $40 for a main event, even if it's Terrence Crawford in a fight that it's just not going to be the level of competition that I think would make it worth $40. If it was him against Boots, I would pay $40 to see him and Boots fight. Him against Keith Thurman, I would pay $40 for that too. Even at this advanced age and skill set of Keith, I would still pay $40 for that. But man, $40 to see him against David Avanesian, even though David is on a little 6 knockout streak or whatever, 6-win streak, I just don't see it as competitive enough to take that kind of money from me. But I don't know. I might change my mind by the weekend. As long as they had a fight, because we do cover boxing, I don't want to be the guy that missed the upset if it was to happen somehow. So I kind of feel like I need to watch it. Maybe I'll get with some friends, man, and we'll do a little watch party and we'll just flip back and forth to ESPN because I just want to see the main event anyway. I don't want to see Cyborg. Speaking of broadcast crews, and we'll close on this point, close on something fun. What do you think of Top Rank's crew of Tim Bradley and Andre Ward and the way that they call fights? And here's the 3 elements I want you to evaluate: presentation, analysis, and then the color parts, the fluff. How do you feel like they handle those 3 things? So just the overall presentation.
I think that they're pretty good. And the reason I think they're pretty good is because they typically are in contrast. Because when you get on a lot of these broadcasts, there's an A side, clear A side, and then there's a B side. And in a lot of these fights, the problem with that is that when it's not equally represented, when the B-side fighter is doing things well in the ring, that's when the broadcast team is talking about outside stuff. They're talking about the trainer. They're talking about what led up to the fight. They're talking about how we got here. They're talking about what fights could happen in the future. They're talking about everything other than the action that's going on in the fight. But because Andre and Tim, in a lot of cases, are contrary to each other, they kind of like balance each other out. So like when Andre is in favor of a certain fighter, a lot of times there's another fighter that's being supported by Tim or vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I actually like them together as a team. I wouldn't say that they're the best when it comes to being able to explain and give you analysis of what's going on in the ring.
Right.
But I will say that they are at least balancing each other out to where, you know, a guy that Andre might think is winning the fight, that's not just the end all be all. That's what's happening. Tim will come in with a contrary point and say, well, hold on, Andre. I don't know. I think he's getting a little tired now. It seems like he's getting hit to the body a little bit. We need to watch out for that the next couple of rounds because it doesn't seem like he's as effective as he was in round 2 and round 3.
Right.
That's just kind of the balance that I seem to get from them when I watch Top Rank cards. And the thing that I enjoy the most about Top Rank broadcasts to me is that they do a post-fight show that really gets you to kind of look forward. After the post-fight interview, they do a full show, just like we would do here, talking about what that fight means and what it means going forward. And I really love that about them, and about their show, is that it gives you a chance to kind of decompress, take in the fight, but then you also get the recap, which I think is really, really cool. So that's my opinion.
I could definitely appreciate the chemistry between the two. There's obviously a mutual respect. They're both accomplished former champions, so that respect is there. What I think sometimes is from a presentation standpoint, I think they need that person that's the non-boxer to cover some of those things because and you sometimes they get this dead air. And you saw it during the Haney fight, and I get it. The first Haney fight against Kambosos, there were stretches where it was so slow. You needed somebody with a great filler to kind of bring things to tie it all together, and it just wasn't there. And then in the second fight, it was kind of quiet, like the second half of the fight, because he was just beating George Kambosos up. So that being said, I feel like sometimes that can be a little bit when it's a one-sided fight, it feels like they just have nowhere to go. And it's especially indicative in some broadcasts when the top ranked favorite, obviously the top ranked guy, is not doing as well as they should. Case in point, Duke Reagan. They weren't going to say anything bad about him in this last fight. He just wasn't fighting good. And they were a little quiet. So that will be my thing, just the presentation side when there's a good bit of dead air. And I just get it. They're boxers, man. They're former boxers. Them dudes they're not media trained. Like me and you have media training. We know how to fill airspace. We know how, hey, it's a 2-second beat. We got to be saying something.
Yeah.
It takes time to grow into that. And not everybody's going to be great at it, even when they grow into it. Paulie just know how to talk. So he can naturally give you analysis and turn right around and give you a couple quips and keep it moving. Sean is kind of the same way. He's going to throw a story in. But I think that's not really their forte. But overall, I do like them as a pair. I would love to see some new network teams. Like you could tell when broadcasts bring the B team in. I'll tell you who's kind of bad. I ain't gonna lie. I don't like the zone broadcasters. I turn the sound down.
Yeah, they're definitely third place of all of the American. Now, here's what I will say. Here's what I'll say. Peep this for all the American boxing fans. Watch the zone when they're in the UK. Watch those afternoon shows on the zone. When Eddie Hearn's in Australia, when he's in Italy, when he's in Spain, when he's in the UK, when he's in the Middle East, watch those fights. Oh, yeah. Those fights have UK announcers, and I like them much better. I really do. I like them much better than Sergio and Chris Mannix. And both of them, I listen to their podcasts. I like their podcasts. Yeah. I just don't think that they're a good match for broadcasting on TV. Yeah, that's just my opinion. I think that they're very, very good. I think they're very knowledgeable. I think that they both bring good things. But for whatever reason, they don't mesh. And what made it worse was when they had Brian Kenny involved too. Brian Kenny and them three together, that just wasn't a good match. But before we go, because we only got a couple of minutes left, we do need to get our picks in. We got official. Got Coach Malachi in here. I'm going to let him go ahead and add real quick. I know Coach Malachi wants to join.
Bring him in. Okay.
What up, Coach?
What's going on, fam? I just checked my message on Twitter. And I saw you drop me a message. I say, man, I'm in at the school right now, picking my kids up. So I said, let me pop up while I'm in line.
What's going on, Coach? Yeah, we appreciate you jumping on with us. We appreciate the time. I know you got your own show and got a whole bunch of other things going on. We are actually just now getting to wrap up our show, but we were just about to give our picks right before you jumped on. Picks for the Sandor Martin, or should I say Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin fight. T, I'm going to let you go first, man. Who you got and why? Because some of y'all going to be surprised.
So, I mean, I personally have T.O. I feel like he's going to get it done. I feel like he has a lot to prove. He's kind of put it out there that I need to be the guy, me. He said a lot of things recently, and I feel like he's going to lock it in focus because he's got some bad tape out there his last couple outs. So I feel like this is the time for him to step up and show that he deserves to be a force at 140, especially if he's looking to fight Regis. So to me, I think that's going to be enough to motivate him to bring his true skill set, because by all accounts, T.O. can fight. We can't deny that. And I think that'll be enough. Just his basic skill set, nothing too technical. Just remain calm, relax, don't come in going crazy, and just set up his shots. And I think he'll have a good night.
Yeah, man. I think for me personally, I'm picking Sandor to win the upset, man. I think Sandor at this point is being severely overlooked, not only just because he's a late replacement, not only just because he's a different style matchup than Jose Pedraza would have been. While they're similar in that they're pure boxers to a certain extent, I think that Sandor's younger. Sandor has less wear and tear on him. Sandor, I think, is going to be a more well-rounded boxer at this point in his career when you compare him to Jose Pedraza. Jose up to snuff the last couple of fights, in my opinion. I'm picking Sandor off of more so to do with Teofimo. Teofimo has seemed to put a lot of bad energy that reminds me a lot of the Kambosos fight. Like, talking about fights that's going to happen in the future, talking about Devin Haney. It seems like he's more focused on Devin Haney, who's not even in his weight class anymore, than it is on the dudes he's supposed to be fighting at 140. Are you at 140 or 135? I need to know because it's not making sense to me. That tells me he's not focused like he should be. And if he's not focused, I think he loses. I'm picking Sandor Martin to win a split decision on Saturday.
Come on in, Coach. What you got?
You know what, man? That both of you guys gave a good analysis. I like Teofimo Lopez, but I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm watching this dude Sandor Martin, right? And I saw when these guys was face off, and Teofimo was, kind of like jovial a little bit,
joking around. That's what I said. I just seen it on Twitter just now.
Hey, and Buddy like, nah, man, this ain't no joke. I'm coming with the smoke, like this ain't gonna be no easy win for you. And I'm getting that, I think this guy's coming to fight. I think it's gonna be a 12-round fight. And I see a split decision, man. I'm pulling for T.O., I'm not gonna lie, but but bro, I won't be shocked if he loses this fight. That kid that dude Sandor Martin can fight. And
for sure.
See what I tell you, man.
No doubt.
I question T.O.'s man, I don't know if he's right up here yet. That's all I'm saying.
Here's the last thing I add to that, Coach. Here's the last thing I add to your point. The last time he was at Madison Square Garden in the Hulu Theater was his worst performance. Yeah. He's going back into that same building, back into those same demons to have to face him again. That might bring something up in him that's not well, man. I really sincerely got a bad feeling that he's going to lose.
Man, y'all making me feel like I need to change my pick. I'm glad I ain't put no bets in yet. I need to go get my lines right because I don't know. I'm still, like you said, Coach, I'm pulling for T.O. I feel like he has the tools to win it. But that's a compelling case that mentally, just like I think it's going to lock him in, it could have the opposite effect. And that's the thing about playing off your emotions. It can make you look really bad or make you look really good sometimes.
Right, yeah, I totally agree, man. If he lock in mentally, I mean, it's going to be a 12-round fight, I feel. T.O. does have pop, but at 140, it's a little different. And Sandor Martin, he can't fight. He's a good fighter, good 12-round fighter. He's going to do some things in that fight that's really going to make it interesting. So I see a 12-round decision. I see a 12-round decision. But I'm not gonna lie, Quinton. If you want to put money on, if you think that Sandor is going to win by upset, you might not be that far off, Q. I'm telling you. That's all I'm saying.
Right. No doubt. Well, Coach, we appreciate you joining us. Sorry that we didn't catch you earlier. I'll definitely send you a link ahead of the schedule next time we're on, so you have a little bit more time with us. We do need to go ahead and head out.
Okay.
But we appreciate the time, Coach. Thank you as always, and we'll catch up sometime soon.
Yes, sir. Salute, man, and shout out to both of you guys, man. T&Q, salute to you, both of you guys. Thank you, brother.
I appreciate you, Coach.
No
yes,
doubt.
Sir.
Peace. All right, Q. Well,
Coach joined us for a minute. I tossed him the link, and he was able to join us. We appreciate Coach, no doubt.
That's what's up. I love it. Definitely. Shout out. He has a YouTube channel or a Spaces that he does, right?
So it's a daily. I thought it's during the week. It's like weekly. I think it's Monday through Thursday. He does something like in the middle of the daytime on his YouTube page that he streams to Twitter. Now that's what we got to get to. And fans, we're going to get there eventually. We just got to do some research. But he can take his StreamYard and live stream it on his Twitter feed, so people can literally scroll through and see it come up and tune in that way. And
we'll definitely get that ready for our next live.
Get that next time, absolutely,
for sure, absolutely. Hey man, so we hit the 2-hour mark, and it's been a real good time. Hopefully, all the viewers out there got a good opportunity to see us really hash these points out. When we do that little 30 to 45 minute show, sometimes we got to just hit it and go. Unfortunately, so we don't really get to flesh out the points and really discuss it, because in between, we go back and forth on Twitter, we text on a regular basis, but some conversations you got to be able to look your bro in the face and just have that talk like we're in person, and this is our opportunity to do that. So we definitely are going to find a way to get some pretty routine opportunities to go live. AQ, you said, hey, we needed that 2-hour block like Skip and Shannon, bro. We got it today. We got it today. So it's the real deal, man. I cannot thank you all enough for tuning in. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. We love we love your input. We love that you guys were putting things that we could throw up in the chat up there on the screen. And your feedback is immeasurable. It means everything to us. Q, do you have any words before we close it out?
Yeah, man. Just thank everybody for joining. Appreciate everybody being on. We were able to put this in because our work schedules matched up this week. I know usually we've been doing an every other week show. We will be back this Monday. This Monday, we will be back and do a full standard show, 45 minutes as we planned. But we love all of the feedback we're getting, and we're just going to grow from here, man. I mean, we'll love the feedback, and I look forward to hearing everybody's comments from all of our post live viewers as well. So definitely appreciate everybody joining, and we got a little something for everybody, and that's the thing that we plan to do with this show. T and I are diverse guys when it comes to sports, so we're not just going to talk about boxing. We're not just going to talk about basketball. We're not just going to talk about football. We're going to talk about all of it when we have the time to. So we appreciate everybody joining. Thank you to all our family and friends, and it's been great. We appreciate it.
Hey, and until the next time, this has been the Mic Check Podcast. I'm Keith T. Word. This is my co-host, Quinton Lilley. We'll catch y'all on the flip. Peace.